what I want to warn you guys might hear some dialogue that you might disagree with. And the type of community that I'm trying to build here is a community that's open to information and willing to kind of take it in and understand it and not burst out with any disagreement without doing the research first, or not even trying to understand what's happening inside of these videos. So that's the community I'm trying to build. So, if people got certain issues, what I'm saying, this might not be the place for you. So what I'm trying to do is I also want to bring education to this music channel. Um, the more that I learn, the more I begin to really appreciate what music is, and but with that being said, so we finna check out shout out to Black Music Archive. And it is pop music, black music, a video essay. So let's check it out.
Every few months in the digital space, you'll see people say things like this. They'll rattle off all of the musical genres that have come from black people. But in the same digital spaces, you will also see people say things like this. This black person or this black group makes music for white people. When people think of black music, the first thing they think of is generally gospel.
I don't know. Let me know if that's true in the comment section now. Let me know if that's true. When you think about black music, do you think about gospel first? Do y'all think about gospel first? Let me know.
The most obvious descendant of gospel music would be soul or R&B. And in the music spaces, black music is generally defined as soul and R&B. After all, up until the 90s, the Billboard charts were literally called the Hot Black Singles Charts.
Wow.
The term pop music comes from the word popular. So the literal definition of pop music is the style of music that is popular at a point in time.
How many people thought about that? How many people thought about pop music as any style of music that's popular within the time? Normally, we kind of think about pop music as being something that's the trendy music, right? But you never really think about it as the popular music at any given point in time. So when the soul funk disco era was happening, you was probably thinking that was the pop music of the time. When the big band music was happening, swing music, that was the pop music of its time. So that was kind of like a different way to think about pop.
So technically, that would mean when soul music was at its height in the 70s with Aretha Franklin and James Brown, they were making pop music. That would also mean in the early and mid 90s what many consider to be the peak of R&B and hip hop.
I would say that
Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, and Biggie Smalls were making pop music. As of the current publishing of this video, according to Spotify stats, the top 5 musical genres in the United States are pop, hip hop, EDM, R&B, and rock. With each of these musical genres, a black person is closely associated with it. Michael Jackson is called the king of pop. Hip hop, as we know, is considered black music. Donna Summer's I Feel Love is credited with being the foundation of EDM music. Of course.
Yeah, we definitely got to get some Donna Summers on the channel. I'm definitely interested in what her music really brought to, as he said, birthing the EDM culture.
R&B is considered black music. The queen of rock and roll is none other than Tina Turner. And while Elvis is considered the king, Little Richard is generally credited as the genre's founding father. But if you want to go a little further, Ike Turner's Rocket 88 is often considered to be the first rock and roll record.
Now, that's something, right? Somebody that everybody hates. It's people that a person that is really detested amongst society is Ike Turner is credited to being one of the founding fathers of rock and roll. Would you believe that? Would you believe that? I couldn't believe it when I first heard that. But then you forget about people like Little Richard. You forget about Little Richard. Little Richard was before Elvis. In the timeline, he was the architect of, he's referred as the architect of rock and roll. So you gotta think about that for a second. You know what I'm saying? Little Richard was doing his thing.
But if you want to go a little further, Ike Turner's Rocket
But
88
Ike Turner?
is often considered
Come
to
on
be the
now. Nobody
first
thought
rock
about
and
Ike
roll
Turner.
record. But you can't have the conversation about rock and roll without mentioning Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who many music critics say invented rock and roll.
We need to bring Sister Rosetta Tharpe on the channel too.
And what's interesting is that though black people are considered the foundations of these genres, among others, black people are not always the majority listeners of them.
Do y'all agree with that statement? I'm sorry I'm stopping so much, but hopefully I'm building up to something at the end. But that for me being black, you know what I'm saying, that would be a true trope. Like black people are often not the majority listeners of these genres. That's what we talking about.
And let's unpack why. Back then, many of the major and monopoly record labels would pour more money into white artists carrying those specific genres. The perfect example of this would literally be Elvis.
Bro, the Elvis fans are going to be mad at this statement. The Elvis fans are not going to like this. You know what I'm saying? The Elvis fans, look, I'm just saying this is history. Okay? It's subjective, but if the timeline is correct, then you gotta kind of agree with the statements on hand. You know what I mean? The Elvis fans ain't gonna like this.
Perfect example of this would literally
Hey, what's up,
be
Karen?
Elvis. So you have that component. And then you add on top of that white artists had TV to push them, as most televisions in the 40s, 50s, and 60s were in white homes. Black artists did not have the luxury of television to expose them to mass audiences, so many of them were limited to performing at local and community levels. But those same major record labels would then come to these local and community levels to watch these black performers perform, and the white artists would learn how to mimic them and then bring it back to television to show their mass white audiences.
Now, before y'all get mad, I want to ask y'all a question. When you watch movies about black artists, right? There's the beginning of the movie is always showing somewhat like a white executive coming to the local bar, and then he's seeing this specific black artist, right? How many movies, and I'm asking y'all a question, how many black movies? The Jacksons, it happened with the Jacksons, The American Dream, Ike and Tina Turner, What else? The what was it? The Five Heartbeats? Did that happen with the Five Heartbeats as well? Um, any musicals, any song about a musician, there's always that element of some white executive is sitting in the crowd of the church, the local bar, or at a talent show. And how many times have you seen that in a movie?
Bring it back to television to show their mass white audiences.
About five black radio stations in the whole country, and the white station wouldn't play me. And then they took Pat Boone and threw Pat Boone on me. And Pat Boone said,
And this is how white people will become the faces of these musical genres. And from this point on, white audiences and artists alike will begin to gatekeep the distribution of music and venues in an effort to keep black performers and consumers out. And that is where the comments such as, this person makes music for white people, or this person listens to white music, comes from. Again, rock music is America's favorite musical genre.
Right.
A 2022 study by CBS shows that 40% of white people prefer to listen to rock music, while 7% of them prefer to listen to hip hop. The same study would show that 35% of black people prefer hip hop, while only 6% of them prefer rock. So this brings up the question now, if music history and music critics unanimously agree that rock music was founded by black people, but all studies show that white people are the majority listener, does that mean that rock music, which was founded by black people, is no longer black music? Or is it when white people take a liking to something that is traditionally associated with black people that it then becomes white?
Were you ever accused?
That's an interesting question. I thought about this question, and that's one of the reasons why I posted that community tab post about what was the popular music for white folks in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I gave y'all all those options, right? But this is the kind of information that it really does make you think, though. It really does. It really does make you think that, let's say, like a lot of people know Elvis, but a lot less people know about Little Richard. A whole bunch less people know about Ike Turner. And Ike Turner name got smashed in that movie with Tina. But you would never know that. You would never know this information if anybody didn't bring it out. But then you kind of think about there's this like pyramid of like where the black artists are playing or are touring and playing, but all that money that they make for the corporation is going to the white artists that are being played on TV. Now note, every time I do a reaction to a white artist, they're on TV. But every time I do a reaction, most of the time, and I'm saying not 100%, but most of the time I'm seeing it as where the black artist is playing in front of a crowd or a small crowd in a club. It's never like on a big stage unless it's depends on the time period. But yeah, but let's go. What do y'all think about that question? Because I have to be honest though, black people, we guilty of this too. We guilty of this. You know what I'm saying? We guilty of this. We guilty of like pushing ourselves away from certain type of music because it is promoted towards a white audience. You know what I mean? So there's that segregation we talk about, you know, when it comes to music. I'm not saying it's all white people's fault, but when you got promoters and television execs, this is all who they want to push because they want to push people that look like them on the television instead of just choosing the best artist to promote. Most of the time you gonna get that. I completely understand that. I'm not even mad at them for doing that, honestly. But it does stifle the greatness of the black artists who are in those genres. So I agree. You know what I'm saying? Ike Turner was trash, Ike Turner was trash, but you can't take that away from him. If he was one of the pioneers of a certain music genre, you can't take that away from him. You can't take that away from him. You can tarnish his legacy with what he did, but you can't take away he was the father. Just like, most of our presidents were slave masters. We know that, but still people are like, yo, they was the president. That was the first president. We not taking that from him. So, you know what I'm saying? We got to be balanced about our information and how we, dig through it.
It's no longer black music? Or is it when white people take a liking to something that is traditionally associated with black people that it then becomes white?
Were you ever accused of something that I've heard many times, copping out and not being black enough?
Male or female, Dionne Warwick is considered the first black crossover artist.
Now we gotta bring a little bit of Dionne Warwick to the channel as well.
I remember vividly, there was a DJ in New York, Rocky G, and I asked him, so why aren't you playing my records? He said, well, you're just too white for us. I said, excuse me?
And you heard that right. Black DJs wouldn't play her music because they said she appealed to too many white audiences.
It's our fault too.
The irony is,
you know what I'm saying?
Dionne.
That's like I said, we at fault for that too. But at the same time, we just following the motto of like the people who say that we're who they working for. You know what I mean? So, for example, if white executives are pushing their music on musicians that only look like them, then we're going to do the same thing. We're not, because we're trying to promote our own people as well. So there was a war for even influencing. It was a war for even influencing media and music in general. Like you can't like. It's always been like a slide on segregation a little bit. It's kind of weird though.
Warwick, a black woman, changed the look, the sound, the standard of pop music.
What's it all about,
And many white artists, such as Cilla Black, came after, copying her sound directly. We can clearly see that Dionne is a black woman, but to this day, black audiences still say that Dionne makes and made music for white people. But her career track record has shown that white people copy her sound directly.
Dude, what do y'all think about that? What do y'all think about that? What do y'all think about that? That's interesting.
Copy her sound directly. Among black artists, Dionne Warwick is also considered the foundation of some of R&B's greatest voices, such as Luther Vandross.
A chair is still a chair, even when there's no one.
She was his favorite singer, and the song that is most associated with Luther, "A House Is Not a Home," belongs to her. So this brings up the question, does Dionne Warwick make music for black people or white people?
Whitney Houston, I want to dance with somebody.
One of the most hurtful moments in the career of Whitney Houston was getting booed at the Soul Train Music Awards.
I can't believe
and
that
having
happened.
leaders of the black community, such as Al Sharpton, refer to her as Whitey Houston.
Wow.
Making claims that she made music for white people. Prior to her streak of #1 hits on the pop charts, Whitney Houston was performing better on the R&B charts. Even after finding mainstream success, she remained a consistent chart topper on the R&B charts. So, the question is, if Whitney is black, and if her initial success comes in black markets, and if her continued success comes in black markets,
right,
but in the interim, non-black listeners take a liking to her, does that, or how does that, strip away everything that's black about her?
And that's normally, and I'm gonna tell y'all, like that's normally what the culture does. That's what we do. You know what I'm saying? We all know that Whitney Houston's mom was one of Elvis's black backup singers. So she was already introduced to the music industry at a young age. So she already had a boost. But at the same time, if most of her success comes on the black charts, comes from on the black, well, let's just say black charts for now. How is she making white music if all her success is coming from the black charts? Then we got to shift back to Dionne Warwick and the copier. Now, in that time period, you could kind of say that that's what it was. Now, we call it doing cover songs today. The copiers were covering Dionne Warwick. But was it promoted like that? Was it them promoting them covering Dionne Warwick's music, or was they trying to say that was their music when it comes to the copiers? Yeah. I mean, look, if we gonna actually get to the meat and bones of history, we gotta be honest. Like, we gotta be honest. We gotta at least consider, even if we don't agree with it all the way, we gotta at least think about that. There, in each era of music, there's a black artist that's synonymous with a lot of white artists at that time period. You could probably find one black person for every 3 artists that are being promoted. And we're talking about just promoting music here, nothing else. So what do y'all think about that?
Because if that is indeed how it works, that would mean that when Anita Baker gets a #1 pop album, less than a year after Whitney Houston, that Baker's album was made for white people.
That's one of my favorite songs of all time.
But no one in the world has ever questioned the blackness of Baker's music.
Right.
Moreover, spirituals are considered the epitome of black music and the black sound. But European audiences are the biggest consumers of that genre.
And it's always been well received. Everywhere you go, they ask for the spirituals.
Oh, so people
it's become very popular.
Wow. So people request that you guys sing those.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Oh wow.
Got the whole world in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand.
The queen of gospel and spirituals is none other than Mahalia Jackson. But if you look at Mahalia Jackson's career and majority of the footage available of her, she's performing for white audiences. So, because white audiences traditionally booked her the most in her career, does that all of a sudden make Negro spirituals a white art form?
Right. So what he's trying to do is really call out the hypocrisy of like the community, really. He's trying to call out the fact that we, you know what I'm saying, if she's like, it ain't her fault that she's being booked by white audiences, but they want her to do the Negro spirituals for the white audience. So that doesn't make it white music. You know what I mean? So let's be honest, like, you know what I'm saying? We're both at fault for it. You know what I'm saying? And I saw that one of the commenters touched on how the civil rights movement bridged the gap, widening audiences of multiple genres. But We're not really talking about the civil rights. You know what I mean? We're not, but even after the civil rights movement, this is still happening. Civil rights was like what, mid-60s? You know what I'm saying? Civil rights was like mid-60s. But this is still happening even after the 60s. He just mentioned like Whitney Houston. Well, in this context, in the part of the video, but you know what I'm saying? Dionne Warwick, you know what I'm saying? It's, you know, it's a tough subject to get through. I ain't gonna lie, this was hard for me to listen to.
Does that all of a sudden make Negro spirituals a white art form? To say artists such as Whitney Houston or Tina Turner makes music for white people not only erases the black people who we say are the foundations of these genres, but it also erases the black listeners who still exist in those spaces. After all, while statistically black people prefer hip-hop and R&B, there is still that small percentage of them who prefer to listen to rock music.
Right.
So while black people may not be the biggest listeners in all music genres, there are still black listeners present in each and every musical genre space.
Oh, black opera singers?
When it comes to black listeners and artists in these white music spaces, many people like to think of them as the exception, but they're not. The music business is just that, a business, and everything in business is calculated. The music business is a relationship-based industry, and that means you have to befriend the gatekeepers or the whites if you want to have major success.
I like how blunt he is with this.
Behind nearly every major black crossover artist is a white person.
Didn't I mention that at the beginning of the video? Behind nearly all white black crossover artists, there's a white music executive. It's synonymous. Like you're never, you know what I'm saying? You'll never not see that. You'll never not see that. So it does bring a little light of who the real gatekeepers are in the music industry. So we just got to be honest, y'all, on all ends, black, white, music industry wise, we got to, there's something weird going on. All right, so let's go.
Every major black crossover artist is a white person. Dionne Warwick had Burt Bacharach, Hal David, and Florence Greenberg. Aretha Franklin had Jerry Wexler. Etta James had Leonard Chest. And Motown wouldn't be able to get into all these white homes without major distribution deals with major white labels.
Is that fair? So nobody would have heard of Motown Records had it been for distribution deals with white labels. There were, name one black distribution center for music. Name one black distribution and just name it. So we would have never heard of the Jacksons if it wasn't for Motown making that deal. This the honesty of it, bro. Everybody was cheated out of good music because of these gatekeepers.
Homes without major distribution deals with major white labels such as EMI and United Artists.
I wish that I could explain to you people that soul is not a category. It is not something you can call R&B or black or pop. It is a feeling. Soul is in here, and it's where you get everything from.
Music is an art. Art is driven and produced by what an artist feels. Once an artist releases a body of work, they have no control over who it impact. Case in point, the Divas.
That's the only Donna song I know.
When Donna Summer recorded Love to Love You Baby, I highly doubt she went into the studio and said, This right here is for the gays. When Jennifer Holliday sang, "And I Am Telling You," she didn't know that the gay community would take such a strong liking to it. When Diana Ross, well, she gave us muscles. But the point is, these women to this day cannot verbalize or understand why this particular demographic has taken such a strong liking to them or their music.
What do you think is the relationship between gay men and divas? Why are gay men so fascinated by or even obsessed by divas?
Now that's a good question. You're going to have to ask a gay man that.
Because what they do know is that they made the music that was near and dear to them. So to bring this back around to black artists appealing to white audiences, many of them didn't know that is what was happening until it happened.
Right. Were you aware that you were the first crossover artist?
No, not until somebody told me.
Well, you don't think about it when you're
No,
doing
you just do it.
About the work.
You know, you just go ahead and do it.
And then someone came over to you and said, that's crossover music.
Yeah.
And no one's ever done that before.
So to reiterate my point, music is music.
And I agree with
that. And
that.
black music is pop music, among many others. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Until next time.
All right, man. Shout out to Black Music Archive with this one. There's a lot of different truths that's like really hard to hear. You know what I'm saying? I believe it. Like a lot of this stuff is very hard to hear. It's not easy. And I can kind of tell like, there's probably some parts that were missed because I'm watching y'all comments go down on the screen. So, and y'all reiterating some things. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of these white execs like really did fight for their artists, but that doesn't change the fact that these artists are synonymous with these, people. You know what I'm saying? The only thing I would say, let me see. I gotta look that up. What about the Jackson 5? Because I started to think that Quincy Jones found them, but I'm not sure about that anymore. But there's a lot of questions to be answered. I wonder how many of you guys agree with this. Okay, let me know.